I was young and naive when it happened. I had never believed in ghosts, and I did not give much thought to haunted places. But that all changed the night that I encountered a ghost myself. It was late at night, and I was walking through a park near my house. I was on my way home from a party, and I had a few drinks with my friends. As I was strolling through the park, I saw a woman standing near a tree. She was dressed in an old-fashioned dress, and her hair was pinned up in a bun. I thought she looked strange, but I did not think much of it at first. As I got closer to the woman, I noticed that she was crying. I approached her to see if she needed any help, but as I got closer, she vanished into thin air. I was stunned, and I froze in my tracks. It was a clear, chilly night, and I could not explain what had just happened. I tried to shake off the feeling of fear and disbelief. I told myself that I was just seeing things, but I knew deep down that what I had seen was real. The next day, I asked around at the park, and the locals told me that the woman I had seen was the ghost of a lady who was murdered there years ago. From that day on, I was obsessed with the paranormal. I started reading books on ghost encounters and visited haunted places in my town. I met other people who had their own ghost stories to tell. It was then that I realized how many people had experienced the same things that I had. One day, I decided to visit a supposedly haunted mansion that was abandoned for years. I went there with a group of ghost hunters that I found online. We entered the house with flashlights, and the atmosphere was eerie. All of a sudden, I felt something tapping my shoulder. I turned around, but there was no one there. That was when I heard it, a voice whispering my name. I shivered with fear and tried to run away, but I could not move my legs. I was paralyzed, stuck in that haunted house with a ghost calling my name. No one else in the group had experienced anything out of the ordinary, but I knew that something was not right. After what felt like an eternity, I was finally able to move my legs. I bolted out of that house and never looked back. I knew then that ghosts were real, and that I had to be careful. Over the years, I have had many encounters with ghosts, some more frightening than others. Each time, I learned something new about the paranormal world, and I am always left with a newfound respect for the spirits that still linger among us. I have learned to listen to my instincts and to never underestimate the power of a ghostly encounter. Growing up, I was always fascinated by the supernatural. I would often read ghost stories or watch scary movies with my friends. But I never believed in ghosts until the day I had my own ghostly encounter. It was a summer evening, and I was staying at a friend's house for the weekend. We had spent the day swimming and playing games, and we were exhausted. We fell asleep quickly, but soon after, I woke up to a strange noise. I looked around the room and saw nothing, but the noise continued. It was a faint whispering sound. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, trying to make sense of what was happening. My friend was fast asleep, but the whispers grew louder. I strained to listen, and I realized that the whispers were coming from outside the window. I could see the shadowy figure of a woman in white, standing outside the window. Her face was obscured, but I could feel her staring at me. I was terrified and wanted to scream, but my voice was stuck in my throat. As I sat there paralyzed with fear, the woman started to speak. Her voice was hoarse and sounded like she was in pain. She told me her name was Anna and that she had died in the house years ago. She said that she was trapped and could not leave. I did not know what to do. I wanted to help her, but I was scared. My friend continued to sleep soundly, and I felt alone and vulnerable. Suddenly, Anna started to wail. It was a high-pitched, mournful sound that echoed through the room. I covered my ears, but I could not block out the noise. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the wailing stopped. I looked out the window, and Anna was gone. The room was silent, and I was alone once again with my thoughts. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. I stayed awake, in a state of shock and fear. The next day, I told my friend about what had happened, but she did not believe me. She thought I was making it up. I went back home, but I could not stop thinking about Anna and what she had said. I did some research and found out that a woman named Anna had died in the house many years before. It was then that I realized that what I had experienced was real. Years have passed since that fateful night, but I still think about Anna and the paranormal. I now know that ghosts are real, and they are not always malevolent. In a way, Anna helped me to believe in the supernatural, and for that, I am grateful. It was a stormy night like no other. The streets were deserted, and the trees were bent over with fear. As I walked home from work, I could hear the howling of the wind, and I clutched my coat tightly around me. Little did I know that I was about to experience a ghostly encounter that would change my life forever. As I reached my doorstep, I saw a figure standing outside my house. It was a woman dressed in a long black gown. Her hair was disheveled and wild, and her face was twisted in agony. I could see through her, and I knew that she was not human. She was a ghost. My heart raced, and I tried to run away, but my legs would not move. I was rooted to the spot, unable to escape the terrifying apparition before me. She started to move closer to me, her eyes fixed on mine. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. When she was inches away from me, she started to speak. Her voice was whispery and ethereal, and I could barely hear her over the roar of the wind. She told me her name was Emily, and that she had died in the house many years ago. She said that she was trapped and could not leave. I could feel her pain and loneliness, and I wanted to help her. In a moment of bravery, I asked her what I could do to help. She said that she needed me to find her diary, which she had hidden in the house. She told me that the diary contained her story, and if I could find it, she would finally be at peace. I was hesitant, but I knew that I had to try to help her. I entered the house, and it was dark and chilly. As I started to look for the diary, I could hear Emily's voice in my head, guiding me towards it. It was as if she was leading me to the diary, and I was grateful for her help. Finally, I found the diary hidden in a dusty corner of the attic. As I opened it, the wind stopped howling, and the room became still. I could feel a presence behind me, and I turned to see Emily standing there. Her face was peaceful, and her eyes were closed. She thanked me for finding the diary, and said that she was finally free. Emily then vanished into thin air, leaving a sense of calm in the room. I knew then that I had experienced something incredible. I had helped a ghost find peace, and she had helped me believe in the supernatural. From that day on, I was no longer afraid of ghosts. I knew that they were not always scary and that they could sometimes just need help. I will never forget that stormy night and the ghostly encounter that changed my life. It happened one summer night when I was spending the weekend at my grandma's house. I was always hesitant about spending the night at her place because the house was old and had a creepy vibe to it that I couldn't explain. But this time, I had no other option but to stay as my parents had gone out of town for a wedding. That night, I went to bed early, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that I always got from the house. Everything was silent, except for the sound of the crickets outside. But as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard something odd. It was the sound of someone whispering my name. I assumed it must have been my grandma, but the whispering was too distant to be coming from her. The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Suddenly, the room became cold, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I struggled to open my eyes, but finally managed to do so with great effort. As I opened my eyes, I saw her, a young girl standing at the end of my bed, staring at me with a blank look on her face. Her eyes were piercing, and I could feel her looking straight through me. I was terrified as I watched her slowly walk towards me. She wore a white dress, and her long black hair was covering her face. She stopped beside my bed and lifted her face, revealing a look of sadness and longing. I could feel her pain and could not help but sympathize with her. The girl then whispered something incoherent, and as quickly as she had appeared, she vanished into thin air. I was left alone, shaken and frightened. The next morning, I asked my grandma if she knew anything about the ghostly encounter I had experienced that night. She revealed that she had seen the young girl in the house many times before. The girl was believed to have died in the house many years ago, and her spirit had never left. As much as I wanted to believe that it was all a dream, I knew that what I had experienced was real. I did some research and found out that the girl had died in the house many years ago in a car accident. The whole experience had left me with a newfound respect for the paranormal world. While I had always been skeptical of ghosts, I now know that there are things in this world that we cannot explain. I learned to look beyond the veil of the visible world and embrace the possibility of the unseen. The ghostly encounter had changed my perceptions of the world and made me appreciate the mysteries of life. I always found the old abandoned house at the end of our street creepy and eerie. People avoided it, and nobody ever talked about who lived there before. As a teenager, I couldn't resist the temptation to explore the inside of the house, and so one night, I made up my mind to sneak inside. Accompanied by a few of my adventurous friends, we made our way to the end of the street and hopped the fence into the yard. Once we were inside, the atmosphere was already tense and chilling, and my heart started beating faster. As we entered the house, the smell of dust and decay filled our noses. The floorboards creaked under our weight, adding to the eerie ambiance. The wallpaper was peeling, and the furnishings were old and tattered. We could feel the spirits of the previous owners lingering around us. As we made our way up the stairs, the temperature dropped, and the atmosphere became even more sinister. Suddenly, we heard a strange noise, like someone breathing heavily on the other side of the room. We followed the sound until we reached the main bedroom. As soon as we entered, we saw her, a young girl with long, dark hair, standing in front of an old vanity mirror. The girl was dressed in a red gown, and her back was facing us. As we approached her, she turned around. Her eyes were empty, and her face was as white as a sheet. We could see right through her. I was frozen with fear, as were my friends. The girl then suddenly disappeared into the mirror. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, thinking it was all a dream. But when I opened them, I saw her reflection, still present in the mirror. We ran out of the house as fast as we could, our hearts pounding with fear. We could feel the ghostly presence following us as we made our escape. The next day, we went back to the house in broad daylight and looked around, but nothing was there. We thought about what we had witnessed and questioned our own sanity. Years have passed since that night, but the memory of the ghostly encounter still haunts me till this day. It made me believe in paranormal activity, and I learned to respect the boundaries between the living and the dead. I now know that the human spirit is strong enough to persist even beyond the physical limits of the body. Although the experience was terrifying, it opened up a new world of possibilities that I had never paid attention to before.